No, you haven't. I'm glad you're in your spot. You're not sitting over there?
What?
You're not sitting over there?
I'm trying to move to the side.
Crowded, no. All right. Good morning, everyone. Mike Hildress, Nebraska Attorney General. Before we start the press conference, just a couple housekeeping items as per usual. This is being live streamed by on YouTube, by our office on YouTube, and also afterwards we'll take questions. Obviously, people in the room take whatever questions you might have. If you are online or watching at home or listening in, please text the number from the media advisory and we can get your questions in at the end. So this morning we are announcing what I think is a national leading, really important lawsuit that we have filed in Madison County, Nebraska against a number of out-of-state entities seeking to stop the flow of foreign money, dark money, into the state of Nebraska to influence ballot initiatives. So that's what we've done. Let me give you a little bit of the background, what we found, and a little bit more detail in the lawsuit. So legally, just so you know, since the country's founding, the funding of elections by foreign nationals has been something that the country has been concerned about all the way back to George Washington. And in fact, in federal law, there was a prohibition on funding, or people believe that there was a prohibition on funding of state elections by foreign nationals. In 2021, the FEC issued a ruling, mildly controversial, but nevertheless, they issued a ruling that said that the prohibition in federal law does not apply to state elections. The Nebraska legislature in 2021, when I was the speaker, in an amendment brought by Senator John Kavanaugh, this is a very bipartisan issue, by the way, joined a number of other states, by our count roughly 12, in passing a specific state statute that prohibits the direct or indirect funding by foreign nationals of state ballot initiatives. So that's what the law is that was passed in 2021, along with a number of other states. So what did we find? Well, what we have found is really a scandal hiding in plain sight. We have a billionaire from Switzerland by the name of Hans-Georg Wyss, who has spent $500 million in the United States that have flowed into elections around the country. And a massive amount, relatively speaking, a massive amount of those dollars have flowed into Nebraska. You can see on the flow chart to my left how the money has flowed. He is at the top. He's one of our defendants. It has gone through these entities. And ultimately, what we have found is these are the ballot petitions from 2024, the ballot petition committees that we have found received money flowing ultimately from Mr. Wyss. The numbers are eye-popping. So they started in 2018, and they were over seven figures. I think about $1.5 million, $1.8 million. It's in the complaint. They increased into 2022. And then in 2024, when these petitions came, there was $9.5 million were spent on Nebraska state ballot initiatives. $9.5 million flowing from a foreign national, contrary to Nebraska state law. Now, as you can see from the flow chart, they have done their very best to obfuscate the source of funds. The money generally comes from things that sound, maybe entities you recognize, Civic Nebraska, Nebraska Appleseed, some others that are local. By the way, this Second House Collaborative is a Nebraska entity. That should be in red. It's fixed in the media packet. None of them say that it's from Hans-Georg Wyss. Now, what we know is from his statements that he's made publicly is, one, he's a far-left radical, but he has bragged about the fact that he can influence elections in the United States, and his name doesn't show up anywhere. This is a circumstance that Nebraska anticipated when we passed LB 843 in 2021. They're explicitly and frankly brazenly violating the law, and so we have filed a lawsuit to stop them going forward. Our lawsuit was filed in Madison County. What we're seeking is a declaratory judgment and an injunction, declaratory judgment declaring that this is unlawful, which we believe it clearly is under Nebraska state statute, and an injunction going forward. It's clear that these groups don't have an intent to stop in Nebraska based on their prior history unless they are forced to stop by a Nebraska court. The last thing I'll say is there's no other lawsuit that we have identified in the country that has been filed on this issue. However, 2 other states among the 12 or so that I identified have passed similar statutes, Kansas and Ohio. Those 2 states, the reason I reference them is that in both states, those statutes have been challenged on First Amendment grounds. The statutes have been upheld under the Constitution. And in those states, as we understand it, what we've seen so far is actually the dark money from foreign sources has actually stopped. So all we are seeking from our lawsuit today is to have the same result in Nebraska, which is we do not want foreign funding of state ballot initiatives in the state of Nebraska. With that, I'll take your questions. Andrew.
Were you able to track the actual dollars from SWIS to the nonprofits in Nebraska, or is it just that the venture fund got X amount of dollars from the Berger Action Fund, and then eventually some money from that nonprofit made it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So Andrew's question is that we've been able to trace sort of almost, my word, not yours, forensically, say $1 from here flowing all the way down. We don't have that level of detail. We've been investigating this for since last year, Andrew. The law doesn't require that. That would be, if we wanted to prove up, say, a direct funding of these ballot initiatives, that might be one way we would do it, but the statute is very clear. It prohibits indirect funding, and so we believe that the flow of money that we have identified from Mr. Weiss to Nebraska ballot initiatives will be sufficient under state law. It's a good question. John, did you have a question?
What were the alarm bells that went off for you guys to originally start looking into this? That's a very complicated flow chart there, a lot of different entities. How did it lead to this, or what was the first thing that tipped you off?
Yeah, so John's question is how did basically the investigation unfold? What tipped us off? It took a little bit of time, John, to really actually unlock, and only really late summer did we were able to find to kind of unlock the flow of money through our investigation. Because early on, we all know Nebraska Appleseed. We all know Civic Nebraska. By the way, they're not defendants in this lawsuit. Everyone who is in blue or Mr. Weiss are the defendants. Some of it, there's a little bit of public reporting of Mr. Weiss and of some of the funds, and we had enough public information initially, John, to be able to tie what we thought was funds from Mr. Weiss to Nebraska ballot initiatives. That wasn't enough to be able to bring the lawsuit, but that's what really kind of kicked it off, was this public sense of, we have an enormous flow of money that are coming through dark money groups, which, by the way, dark money groups on their own, as would be very clear, are not unconstitutional, and dark money groups on their own are not against state statute. So that's not enough to be able to allege a violation. But we had enough to think, it seems like maybe there's a there, which kicked off the investigation. But it wasn't until we got into the investigation that we were able to sort of untangle sort of the spaghetti and figure out how the flow of money went. Yes. And then I'll come to you. Go ahead, and then I'll.
Does this impact the statutes that are already in place?
Yeah, great question. So this impact the statutes that were subject to the ballot initiatives. We're not seeking. No, it doesn't. We're not seeking invalidation of those statutes on those grounds. As you know, of course, we have active litigation on the marijuana petition, not the others. So no, we're not seeking the court to invalidate them. No, we're not. Fred, did you have a question?
Yeah, is there a comparable dark money foreign influence on right-wing causes? Have you looked into that?
We have no. So Fred's question is there dark money, something comparable on the right? I've noted this as a far left radical, we believe. Have I seen anything on the right? We've seen no evidence of that. To be very clear, the statute has no ideological carve-out. So just because it comes from a conservative source or for a conservative ballot petition, there's no exception under the statute. If there is evidence or someone has evidence, I'd encourage them to bring it forward. But what we have not seen is the comparable web of dark money activities, and certainly not something that's been tied to a foreign source. But to be very clear, my job is to enforce the law. And if someone is breaking it, no matter who it is or for what purpose, it does not matter. And so if there is evidence of a foreign source funding directly or indirectly what might be considered to be a right-wing or conservative or Republican initiative, we absolutely would investigate that. We just haven't seen it. Yeah, Andrew.
Typically, groups like the Fairness Project and 1630 Fund don't disclose their donors. How are you able to trace the money to Switzerland?
Yeah, some of that, these are nonprofits, and so some of it is through 990s and other ways. You can't get all of the information, but we were able to get it through public, normal sources, a little bit through our investigation that we had with at least one of the entities to be able to make some of the ties. Yeah, Suzanne, do you have a question? Or not you?
Hughes from WJAG in Norfolk, as well as Andrew Nelson, are asking the question why the lawsuit was filed in Madison County.
Yeah, that's a great question. So why did we file the suit in Madison County? Well, just take a step back. When I became Attorney General, one of the things that I noticed was every case was filed in Lincoln. That's great. We have great judges in Lincoln. We got great juries in Lincoln. But a lot of the cases we file have statewide concern. And so it was a policy in my office when I took over that we were going to not take all the cases and not file them in Lincoln, but we were gonna file cases in other jurisdictions around the state. You may remember, some of you were here, when we filed lawsuit against the 4 out-of-state manufacturers of semi-trucks, when we sued them for violation of antitrust laws. That lawsuit was not filed in Lincoln, it was filed in Lincoln County. So it wasn't in Lancaster, it was in Lincoln County. This is just an extension of the policy. We have not filed something in Madison County. This is there's no doubt that this is a statewide issue, and so that's why we filed it in Madison. Yeah, John and then Juan.
Following up on Fred's question, have your office applied the same level of scrutiny to other initiatives in terms of where their funding comes from on the other ideological side? Do you apply the same level?
Absolutely, and our framework is, so just to be clear, John, so I don't go, and my office doesn't go and say, let's just go take ballot initiatives and just dig through their reports and see if we can find something. It's not how we operate. If we see something that suggests that there could be an issue, we will investigate. And I would just tell you, we have not seen something that's comparable, similar in any way on the right, but absolutely, if we did, we would. It's just the same question. We're actively litigating an issue relating to fraud in the marijuana, our allegations of fraud in the marijuana petition. What I said at that previously is if I found people breaking the notary laws when it comes to the pro-life petition or some petition that I voted for or agreed with, we absolutely, it's my obligation, moral and legal and otherwise, to follow the law and apply it no matter who it is, and absolutely we would have. Juan, do you have a question?
You kind of answered it with the previous question. So you filed in Madison County not for, more favorable judges, just kind of, it's a statewide issue.
Mhm.
So it's-
Yeah, so just to be clear, so we're not asking for a jury trial, so it's not about jurors. We got great judges in Lancaster County. We have had a lot of success in Lancaster County, but I think when you have major issues that are statewide, I think it's very appropriate to have other parts of the state be able to weigh in on it. And I think historically, I can't say I've done a comprehensive, exhaustive survey of all the cases we've ever filed, but I'm not aware of any case that we've ever filed outside of Lancaster County. And I think it's appropriate for judges representing other parts of the state to weigh in on these cases. Yeah, Andrew.
Earlier, you indicated that like 990s you've been able to trace money to at least one of these groups. I guess, do you know how much money those Swiss groups have actually donated to the dark money groups?
So first of all, everything that we put in here in this flow chart, Andrew, I want to make clear, we've been able to trace it, and we're not guessing that there's money going here. So any arrow, we've been able to trace money through 990, public filing, some other source. So I want to be clear about that. And then in clarifying that, I forgot your question.
How much money have the Swiss groups given to the dark money groups?
Some of that might be detailed in our complaint. Is some of that detailed in our Complaints Act? Yeah, I don't have those numbers offhand. That should be detailed in the complaint. If it's not for some reason, or if there's some gap, you follow up and we'll see if we can give you that information.
You're saying you're not guessing, but you don't know how much.
No. That's not what I said. I don't have the complaint in front of me. What I'm saying is, I don't have the number precisely at this moment to just give you the precise number. My point is, we're not guessing that there's money flow between all of these. All I'm saying is I just don't have the numbers in front of me.
All right.
Online questions, Suzanne?
Sarah Gensler from Flatwater Free Press. Would this mean that in the future, any organization that contributes to a ballot committee couldn't accept money that originated from other organizations that accepted funding from a foreign source? And how would that be enforced?
So the question is, does this mean going forward, can people accept money from organizations that have received funds from foreign sources? So first of all, the answer is they absolutely have to follow the law. The law prohibits indirect, direct funding of ballot initiatives. There are potentially ways where an entity could receive funds, could segregate it somewhere, and make very clear that it's completely not connected to any of these types of activities. We have zero evidence that that's the case here. We don't think that that's the case here. I would encourage them all, if they have any concern about that, to talk to their own lawyer and just to double check. But yeah, they should. How will it be enforced? Unfortunately, they thought that they could get away with it, in our view. I mean, they've been doing this for 4 cycles, spending almost $10 million last year. And I think most other people, I hope going forward, part of the reason why we filed this lawsuit is going forward that they have the message that this isn't right. And so people should double check and make sure that they're following the law going forward.
She had a second.
Yes. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, from Sarah.
Did you confirm that these organizations wouldn't have had enough money to fund the ballot initiatives at the level they did without the amount of funding that originated from WEAS?
So the question, I think if I understand the question from Sarah is, did we confirm that they would not have had the money? If they didn't get the money from Weiss, they would not have had the money to do the initiatives? Is that the question? Am I hearing that right? Whether they would have had the money or not had the money was not a question that we got into. Our question is, did they receive money indirectly or directly from foreign sources? That's what the statute says. Statute doesn't say anything about, well, would they have had enough to actually get on the ballot or not? And as I mentioned in the earlier question, we're not seeking to have these laws overturned or invalidated because of the receipt of foreign funding, so that just wasn't something we investigated. But, I mean, at least one of them received over $6 million, which is quite a bit, but yeah, go ahead.
Have you communicated with any of these organizations, and if so, what have you got in response?
So we did, as part of an initial investigation, there was an organization that we did talk to. Frankly, we didn't get what we were hoping to get, which was cooperation. We got a lot of obstruction and obfuscation, and not what we would hope to get. So we did have some, which was our initial investigation. We went straight to the source. We said, give us some documents that help us, give us confidence that you follow the law. And yeah.
And a follow-up out of that, are you planning in the future to do any more investigation into any of these organizations for potential wrongdoing?
Well, I mean, as part of the case, we will have discovery, and we will be more directly investigating their activities as part of this litigation. Hopefully after this, they will follow Nebraska law, and we won't have to. Yes, ma'am.
Sort of to tag onto that, these are fairly large organizations. Do you anticipate backlash coming from them after this press conference?
Do I anticipate that they'll have backlash? I don't know what they'll do. What I hope that they will do is that will stop spending foreign money and putting foreign money into Nebraska elections. That's what I'm hoping for. Whether they react, look, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been dealing with a lot of aggressive counsel, a lot of people, a lot of big sophisticated companies. Sometimes they act aggressively, sometimes they pound the table, sometimes they don't. And the truth is ultimately, are the facts and the law on your side? We think that they are, and that will be what will drive the case. They can react however it is that they want to react. I wasn't elected to be concerned about that backlash. But I will tell you this is a bipartisan issue. I mean, this is Senator John Kavanaugh voted, almost everyone voted for this. Maybe everyone did. I don't have the final reading count in front of me. And California has banned it. Nebraska has banned it. I mean, the idea that we shouldn't have foreign funding in our local elections is something that cuts across party lines and ideological lines. So I'm confident Nebraskans would be outraged. Most Nebraskans would be outraged about this. And I'm hopeful that they're glad that we're standing up to it. And if there's some backlash from some out-of-state dark money organizations, so be it. Yeah, John?
I mean, with this, how are groups supposed to do this correctly? Because some of these organizations are very large. They're getting funding from a lot of different sources, some of them foreign, some of them domestic. If Civic Nebraska, say, is taking money from them, how are they to know this is coming from a foreign source and therefore it can't be allowed in the state?
Well, here's what I would say, John. In my experience, I think actually your question sort of like is the answer. When you have organizations that have that much money, are so well resourced, they can hire the most expensive, smartest lawyers. I don't know what Civic Nebraska, they're not a defendant. We are not targeting Civic Nebraska. We're not targeting Nebraska Appleseed. I'm not in any way suggesting that they did anything wrong. So the part of your question is how should they know? Well, I'm not going after them. I would hope that they're careful. I would hope that they were careful in the first instance. But you're talking about huge organizations that have tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. They should do the right thing. They have the capacity and the resources to hire very sophisticated counsel to do the right thing. We don't think they've done the right thing, and that's really the problem. But we're not going after Nebraska Appleseed or Civic Nebraska. Yeah, Andrew.
You mentioned earlier that like a group like the 1630 Fund, that can theoretically segregate the money where they have a pool of foreign donations, a pool of domestic, and funnel that.
I mean, and I want to be very clear about, I'm not giving them legal advice or saying I'm saying that theoretically there might be a path to being able to do that.
Do you know that they did not do that?
We have reason to believe that they did not, yeah,
What's the
absolutely.
reason to believe that?
It's part of our investigation, so it's in our allegations in our complaint. Yeah, John.
What remedy are you seeking for this?
We're not seeking fees, we're not seeking costs, we're not seeking anything financial. We're seeking a declaratory judgment saying that this is illegal, and we're seeking an injunction so they don't do it going forward. Which for the non-lawyers watching this online or reading about this, that just essentially means we want them not to spend foreign money in elections going forward. Suzanne?
John Goss from Douglas County Gazette. Much has been made of the policies Weiss was trying to pass with his funding. Are you now flagging specific policies as potentially being something that the may be influenced by foreign involvement?
Am I flagging certain policies that have been influenced? I mean, I think, well, you can see on the flow chart, all the money went to 5 identified ballot petitions, so you can assume that those policies, he was in favor of those policies, or at least the money flowed to that. I'm not making any other statement as to what kind of policies he agreed with or didn't agree with, or, yeah, is there a follow-up?
Andrew Nelson had a second question. Is the AG willing to name the organization that was not cooperative?
The question is, well, am I willing to name them? I'm not at this time.
I think
Fred.
you've answered this in 2 different questions, but you speak faster than my brain can absorb some of the information. What triggered it, and you've said no evidence of something similar on the right. Have you looked at the right?
So the question is, so the question I answered earlier, and then the question is, how did I come up,
What triggered?
what triggered it, what was our process? And part of my answer was, what I didn't do was just look at the left. I didn't just say, let me dig through, or have my team dig through all these financial reports. So I didn't do that on the left, and I have not done that on the right. I have not done that at all. Not my job. I'm not out there hunting for those types of issues. So first, to the extent your question was, did I go do that on the right? Did I go look on the right? The answer is I didn't do that for the left or the right. What I did do was we became aware through public reporting that some of these funds may have been, and by the way, there are websites out there, there are sources out there that have collected some of this information, and that some of these funds have flowed into organizations that spent money in Nebraska. Once we became aware of that fact, that was enough, Fred, to say, let's look into that. So
And there was nothing comparable?
there's been nothing comparable to that. So our process is the same. Did not go digging for an issue on the left, didn't go digging for an issue on the right. Probably should switch hands there. We have evidence on the left of a potential issue, which we investigated, had nothing comparable on the right that we had. So we followed the same process.
Also, where did Weiss get his money?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. Andrew?
I guess the law prohibits like this indirect flow of money.
Mhm.
There's also nothing like requiring that disclosure at the state level. Does the state need stronger disclosure laws to make sure?
That's a good
guys
question.
have to do this investigation to determine this. How do you know that this isn't happening, in every election?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. In fact, the question from, I think it was Suzanne online in terms of, or maybe it was John's question in terms of how do local groups understand if they, if the people they're receiving money from got their own money from foreign funding. It's a good question. I will tell you, Andrew, there may be, we haven't thought about the policy fix angle. There may be coming out of this some things that we could do to tighten disclosures or maybe certifications from those outside groups. I mean, I would put most of the onus, if not all of the onus, on these big, large organizations who are extraordinarily well-resourced. So there might be some things to be able to be done there. There may be even some ways that some of the accountability and disclosure rules could be strengthened. That's a good question. And candidly, we just haven't gotten into the policy side yet. Yeah.
So these organizations, if they were to, going forward, continue to fund these ballot initiatives, are you saying that they would have to cut ties directly with the Swiss funding? And have you looked into what that would mean, how that would impact financially those organizations?
I have not looked into how that would mean. All I'm saying is they can't break Nebraska law. So they can't be receiving on the one hand foreign funding and then spending money on the other hand in Nebraska on state ballot initiatives. Whether that would do anything to their organization, I mean, I don't know. And honestly, that's not really the job that the state legislature has given me to look at. My job is, are they doing it or not here? Not, is that gonna have a financial impact can they continue to survive if they break the law in Nebraska or not? That's really not the question that I'm looking at, and that's really not my primary concern. My concern is, don't break the law, don't spend more money in Nebraska. Yeah.
And with the results you want from this, is this civil or criminal? I mean, what is the results that you're looking for?
Yeah, so great question, John. So the question is civil, criminal. There's a civil suit. We're not seeking any criminal sanction. Our goal is to get a civil injunction that we would believe that they would follow. We have some understanding that in other states they have They haven't followed, it's not that there's been an injunction, but that they have backed out of states where these laws have been upheld. But if they violate an injunction, that would be criminal, and so there would be a criminal element down the road, but that's not, we're hopeful that we don't even get there. We get the injunction, and then they don't. And then they just follow the court's order. Yeah, Suzanne?
John Giles, the second question from Focus County Gazette. We know if Weiss is a solo actor or if there is a larger issue and other dark money groups exist.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have evidence of other foreign nationals spending money directly or indirectly in the state of Nebraska on ballot petitions. Is it a broader problem nationally? I don't know. But we haven't looked into that, so it's a good question, but I just don't know the answer. Fred?
Is there any federal action? You said it was also against federal law.
So, no, this is so back when I started, it's actually the federal issue. The FEC took an action that actually kind of got us to where we are today. So there is a statute that prohibits foreign funding of elections, and I'm speaking at a high level. Everyone assumed, Fred, that applied to foreign funding of state elections. And in 2021, the FEC, over a dissent of one of their board members, commission members, issued an opinion or a ruling saying that no, this federal statute this prohibition does not apply to state ballot initiatives. So that meant that ruling created a potential loophole. So in that moment in time, it's possible that it was legal, actually. Many states have not closed that loophole. Nebraska did, and that's what we did in 2021. We thought for a long time federal law prohibited it. FEC said, no, you're wrong, it doesn't, and Nebraska acted. Had Nebraska not acted, had Senator John Kavanaugh not brought that amendment, had we not put it into law, I don't think we could be here today, because we don't have a hook to stop foreign funding in Nebraska ballot elections. But because we passed the laws. We thought it was federally prohibited. FEC said, no, you're wrong. It wasn't a court order, obviously, Fred, so maybe that could be adjudicated at some point. That's not that's not what we're trying to do. It's not part of our lawsuit. You have any other questions? Yeah, John.
This is unrelated, but the Attorney General of the Omaha Tribe
Mhm.
recently testified that your office was using the tobacco tax compact
Yeah.
as leverage against their application and rollout of medical marijuana.
Yeah.
What's your comment?
Yeah, so a couple things. Number one, I've read the press. First thing I learned, maybe the first thing, besides showing up on time, but maybe the second thing that I learned when I was a baby lawyer was don't talk about private conversations publicly. If you do that, you will lose your credibility. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to talk about my private conversations that I had with anyone. When Nebraska speaks on this issue, we'll do it through a written response to the Omaha Tribe. But I think there's been some confusion about how these tax compacts work, so maybe I can just speak generally to that. So the tax compact is a arm's length transaction, a contract between two sides. No tribe has any right to a compact. None. Nebraska has no obligation to enter into a compact. No obligation. Nebraska has entered into a compact in the past, with, for instance, the Santee. The reason you would do that is because there's something that's good for both sides. Something good for the state, something good for the Omaha Tribe. Now, when we had a conversation, I'm not talking about my private conversation with the council for the tribe, but when we met with the tribal members, what they asked for was a 90% cut of state tax revenue, 90%, which is like $300,000 plus or minus. Now, if you ask them the question, well, what does the state get it for that? The answer is nothing, actually. The state gets no real material compliance benefit. The state really gets no benefit at all. But have I got a deal for this? What we heard was, state of Nebraska, you may not get anything on this, but have I got the deal for you? Because you get a proposed, unlawful, recreational, and a proposed medicinal marijuana scheme that's unlawful under Nebraska state law, in part because they're not a licensed dispensary or cultivator. And we're going to sell to non-citizens. And so we're going to violate your law. We're going to sell a poison contrary to your law to your citizens. You're going to have to deal with the fallout, state of Nebraska. You're going to have to deal with the cost of that. You're going to have to deal with your citizens having adverse effects, psychosis, or committing crimes from the marijuana. So you give us 90%, you give several $100,000, and in exchange you get nothing, but actually we're gonna break your laws and sort of thumb your nose at Nebraska state statute. So that has been the ask. Those things are not, there's no retaliation. Nebraska is not forced to do anything. We'll respond in due course. But hopefully, as people understand what these tax compacts are, they hear words like retaliation. I think people think, well, you can't retaliate. You shouldn't be able to retaliate. And I think, generally speaking, that's not what people are about. But it's not. What they're trying to do is get Nebraska to enter into an arm's length deal it's got to be good for Nebraska. Now, ultimately, to be clear, which is what I told them, it's the governor's call, and we'll respond on his behalf in writing at the appropriate time, and you'll be able to see the letter, and you'll be able to see our response.
You said it was contrary to Nebraska law, but medical marijuana is legal in Nebraska.
Yeah, but I don't think, John, just to be super clear, is that, I mean, correct me, anyone in here correct me, the Omaha Tribe doesn't have a dispensary license, do they? They don't have a cultivator license, do they? So the Omaha Tribe, you might have medical marijuana in the state of Nebraska, but that doesn't mean some dispensary and alliance can just like whip up a dispensary and start selling.
But Alliance isn't a
Yeah,
self-determination.
but it doesn't mean that they can just sell to non-citizens without a dispensary license. It's one question about selling to tribal citizens, but it's a totally another question selling to non-citizens. They don't have a license to do that. So yeah, it is contrary to law. It's contrary to federal law, by the way. It's contrary to state law. Both no permissive use of recreational marijuana, and it is also contrary to the ballot petitions that were filed. Yes, Suzanne.
John Dawes, do we know why Reese is specifically trying to influence Nebraska?
The question is why. I mean, I'd be speculating outside of his public comments. It seems to be a large-scale effort to influence state policies all around the country and turn them left. But I would be speculating as to his focus on Nebraska.
On another unrelated topic, what was your advice to Secretary Edmund about supplying the federal government the voter information that they asked for?
So I said that publicly, Fred. And my advice was, I think it's a question. It's information a request that's totally in bounds. I think there should be some confidentiality restrictions. Social Security numbers, of course, are issued by the federal government. Department of Justice routinely handles confidential information, whether it's a federal investigation like our investigation, joint investigation with the FBI over Hobie Roop, or anything else, and I thought they're entitled to it. And I also think that voter fraud is a real problem, and I think that if we're gonna get to the bottom of it and ensure the integrity and confidence in our elections, having this sort of like ability to cross-check different silos of information seems to make total sense. Now, as you know, my advice to him now, because there's an active court case, which can't be resolved because of the shutdown, we have a stay because of the shutdown, because DOJ attorneys can't work during the shutdown. So it's stayed right now. So my advice to him at the moment is let the court case play out. So, anything else online? Andrew? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you.